I was one of the grandchildren, and we called him Papa Larry. But my parents and Aunt Barbara and Uncle Turk, they called him Pop. Postcards he sent to my parents were always signed Pop. What I remember most about Papa Larry is him sitting in his big red leather chair, the smell of the pipe he was always smoking. That's me in the chair with him. My grandfather grew up in Newark, New York, and graduated from Colgate University in 1921, a superior student and an athlete, playing basketball and baseball. He was constantly doodling and photographing, but few knew he was an artist. In fact, he didn't discover his art talent until many years later. When he and my grandmother, his wife, Margaret, moved to Pittsford, New York, where he co-founded Canfield and Tack Printing Company in Rochester, he began taking art classes at the Rochester Memorial Art Gallery. There he studied with the artist, his teacher, Carl Peters. My grandparents, like so many families in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, were really big into Christmas cards. Early in their marriage, my grandfather did caricature Christmas cards that told family stories. In later years, every holiday season brought a painting of my grandfather's work and a poem. In hindsight, I think this must have been his way of exhibiting his art. Papa Larry rarely exhibited and never sold his work. In the late 1930s, this painting of his was exhibited at the Finger Lakes exhibition through the Rochester Memorial Art Gallery. It's the only reference I can find that he ever exhibited. Growing up, my family often made trips to Rockport, Massachusetts with my grandparents, where my grandfather and Carl Peters were painting. The pair and their wives became close friends.
So artists, going back 120 years would come here because of the quality of light and also the subject matter.
Todd sells the art of my grandfather's era from his gallery on Bearskin Neck.
In the 30s and 40s was probably when most of the sort of Cape Ann School painters, as they're known now, really had most of their output 30s and 40s and 50s. And Carl was in that group.
It's a famous spot where Papa Larry frequently painted.
So would my grandfather have been the Cape Ann School, or would he?
Yeah, Cape Ann School was really a period of time where a lot of the artists up here were painting, and it was really a branch of American Impressionism.
When not trekking to the Massachusetts coast to paint, Larry painted scenes around Pittsford and upstate New York. You can see the history of this upstate New York town in its horse-drawn wagons. Here is his painting of Shane's Alley in Pittsford, New York in the 1940s, and here, the Shane of today. I don't have a picture of him with his camera, but he carried it everywhere, photographing scenes he would take to his basement studio in his home in the village of Pittsford. Down there were stacks of sketchbooks, just a few remain. The drawings reflect the photographs and the scenes which inspired Papa Larry's paintings. He used color vividly in the trying times of the 1930s and 40s, and then in the 50s, quieter colors, but always color, paintings reflective of a time gone by. I remember my grandfather as a serious man with a jolly soul, always sharing a laugh. I think he'd be happy knowing his art's on display 85 years after he last exhibited publicly, and years after he last sat in his red leather chair.